But yeah, demographics of the two political parties, the white males dominate them still. White males are Republicans. It's not that they don't want anyone of color. They'd probably welcome someone of color, as a matter of fact. It's just that people of color don't want to go over there for some reason. Huh? It wouldn't be a waste of time. It'd just be kind of like, this is strange type thing. People wouldn't expect it. But yeah, those are the two political parties. That's a little out of place there. Now to third parties in the United States. The main third party is Libertarian Party, the Green Party, the Socialist Party, USA. The third largest party out of these, which one of these do you think is the third largest party in the United States?
Libertarian.
The one you hear about the most. Why Libertarian and why not Greens? Hey, where's the Green Party at? It's kind of where what? Where we are? The classes. It's not full-blown social, it's left of center. Left of center. Whereas the Libertarian Party, you know, when it comes to authority, no, not less authority, but you know, but where do they kind of hesitate on? They don't want to what? They don't want to drift over here, so they keep, it's basically they keep the right-wing rhetoric, the economic conservatives. Economic conservatives.
Some libertarians.
Libertarians are economic conservatives and social libertarians, social liberals, social, yeah, you know, less authority. Green Party and Socialist Party is socialist. Green Party is left of center. Now, in an election, these two parties right here, which party do you think hates them? What major party do you think cannot stand them?
Socialists.
I'm referring to the Green or the Socialists. Who do you think hates them? Democrats. Can anyone guess why? It draws away votes from the Democratic Party. So these people on the left, the closest party to them is the Democratic Party. So if another party comes up like this and appeals to them, even though they're not going to win, these votes siphon votes away from Democrats. Whereas, what do you think the relationship between the Republican Party is and the Green and the Socialist Party? It's a financial relationship. The Republican Party gives money to both of these parties to siphon votes away from the Democratic Party, whereas the Democratic Party is not as tight by any means because some libertarians vote Democrat. But yeah, Socialists, they love that Republican money. Green Party, they love that Republican money. Which brings us to the Green Party and Ralph Nader in the 2000 presidential election. Anyone know what happened there? Other than Bush stole the election, yeah. In Florida. Ralph Nader supposedly, and he did, and if everyone that would have voted for Nader voted for Gore, that would have been it. Gore would have won the presidency. But anyways, that was an example of how the Green Party siphoned votes away from Democrats and took the balance in favor of Republicans. However, something they didn't mention when they talk about Ralph Nader costing Gore the election was that Gore dropped the ball in Tennessee, which, what's Gore's relationship with Tennessee? It's his home state, and he couldn't even win it. And he couldn't win Arkansas, which was the home state of his president when he was vice president. He couldn't win those. Why? Because he wanted to distance himself from guess who? Because he was trying to court whom? Social conservatives. Why would you distance yourself from Slick Willie if you wanted to court the social conservative? Is there anything about Clinton that might turn off a social conservative? Not like their people don't, but he's just kind of a not so nonchalant about it. It really pisses people off. And he's kind of... all right, when somebody is up for an impeachment, and when they get impeached for that, and they get basically acquitted by the Senate of being removed from office, and afterwards he's up at the podium in Congress joking, and he's he's like, what, that many people voted to remove me, he basically said, I demand a recount. And he was kidding about it. He thought it was a joke. Yeah.
You wasn't serious about it?
No, he was kidding. He was joking. He thought it was amusing, I'm sure. Forgetting whatever was going on in his marriage. I mean, he was on Oprah within a couple of years talking about how Hillary made him sleep on the couch. Yeah. Anyways, that's a good way to alienate yourself from social conservatives. But Gore, at the end of the day, is all Ralph Nader's fault. It was all Ralph Nader's fault, not Gore's bad campaigning or reluctant campaigning.
So what did Ralph Nader actually do? He just...
Ralph Nader took votes from Gore, basically. Siphoned votes away. Were he not to have been in that election, they would have probably voted Democrat, and that would have been it for Florida. But there were things, like I said, it wasn't as simple as that. Gore dropped the ball in his campaign. You don't need to take that down. It's just, this is just an example of how a third party is blamed for taking votes away. 1992, the election between Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, who was running for re-election, and can anyone guess the third party candidate? Can I finish?
Ross Perot.
Ross Perot. Ross Perot was kind of a libertarian, a fiscal conservative, very rich, very rich. They all are, but not like him. Not like him. He had more money to throw at it. He shouldn't have dropped out of the race, though. He might have actually won it. It would have been crazy if he did. Who knows?
So the third party never won an election, did they?
Never. Never won a presidential.
Why did he drop?
The first time? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, basically, like, he was gaining momentum. I forgot. No, I used to know why. I'm sure he'll give you a reason. I used to know why, but he dropped in and he lost momentum. But nonetheless, though, when he got into the election, he stole votes not only away from Republicans, but also Democrats. Another fact, you had the Ross Perot factor there, taking votes away from fiscal conservatives, from Republicans. Why do you think Republicans would flock to Ross Perot? Because at the time, who did George H.W. Bush have to appeal to? There was a growing power within the Republican Party. We're talking economic conservatives with Ross Perot. George H.W. Bush was having to start pandering to the social conservatives, the religious right. Because of that, it alienated a lot of Republican voters who went over here. A lot of Southern Democrats went over to Perot, but that wasn't enough. That did not affect the Democratic Party like it did the Republican Party. The Democratic Party, or Clinton won that election because of Ross Perot and because social conservatives alienated George H.W. Bush. But again, the third party factor, did they win? No. Did they affect the election? Sure. 68 election, George Wallace, and was the third party candidate. Richard Nixon and Hubert Humphrey were the two main candidates. Richard Nixon won that election. Why do you think why did Wallace enable Nixon to win that election? Who was George Wallace? Governor of Alabama, segregation now, segregation forever. He was a segregationist. He was supposedly a pretty good guy behind closed doors, though. He had black friends and everything, but when the cameras got rolling, he was a raging racist when the cameras were rolling. So he runs on a states' rights ticket, anti-segregation ticket with a military general. So the difference between him and Perot and Ralph Nader, he carried some states in that election, electoral votes, in guess what part of the country. So, which stole votes away from what party?
Democrat.
The Democratic Party used to be the segregationist party. Now this Democrat segregationist voting for George Wallace, which enabled Nixon to win the election, and the rest is history. Those votes that went for Wallace in that election would go for Nixon in the next election. You learn a lot from George Wallace. People in the South, whether they want to admit it or not, some of them just don't like black people. And we talked about that whole Nixon racist Southern strategy, law and order stuff. Yeah. The subconscious. Congressional elections. There's no third parties in Congress. None. There have been. When we were going through the changing of the guard from Democrats to Republicans and Republicans to Democrats, how many of you remember seeing non-blue or red colors in the early part of the 20th century? You asked me about it. Those are third parties, populist parties, which were kind of communist. But, you know, being here, they got gobbled up by the, by the Democratic Party. Let's make one thing straight. The Republican Party, why is there no third party that the Republican Party could gobble up? We've gone over this before. Because how much more further to the right can you get? There's no point in starting a third party over here or up here. Why not just join the Republican Party? Democrats are usually the ones who have the trouble with third parties more often than not. Or wanting to, quote, gobble them up or spin them to death, basically. But you had a lot of populist parties. No socialist parties. Free soil parties back in the 1860s. Silver parties. Greenback parties. Not that any of these matter. And a lot of, like I said, it was an issue party, a single issue party. The Libertarian Party is what we'd like to call an ideological party, because libertarian is an ideology, basically. Yeah, a lot of old single issue parties elected people into Congress. Today, though, there are no third parties in Congress, like I said, but there are what? There's two of them in the Senate. None in the House, but there's two in the Senate. Can you guess what they're called? Independents. They're not part of a party. They caucus with the other parties, but they're not a member of that party. The two independents in the Senate caucus with the Democrats. Now I say local government here because third-party movements usually represent a third way. A way that's not this, and a way that's not that. And a lot of third parties, a lot of movements start at the local level. And we don't talk about local government in this, but for example, in Milwaukee, they elected a handful of socialist mayors in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, one of which founded what would become this. But that's at the local level. The local level. The farther up you go, you don't see it. The party, can anyone guess which state in the legislature has the most independents in the state legislature? No, think maple syrup. Vermont. Vermont, yeah. The most independents. They caucus with the Democrats, though. And what of a state like Vermont or Massachusetts? 1920, what party were they heavily? They're heavily Republican, yeah. It's crazy, I know. So basically, third parties in the United States, what can they not usually do?
Win an election.
Win, yeah. But what can they do? They can kind of muck up elections and
They can affect them.
Basically muddy the waters. But the reason why they don't win elections is because why? Can anyone guess why?
There's no money.
All the big interest groups, we'll get into those later if we have time, contribute to whom?
Republican Democrats.
And Democrats. Both, trust me. They're both, so anyways, I don't want to get too far into that. Now, out on the campaign trail, I had the question here, is the candidate himself or herself? Or are they somebody else?
Somebody else?
And they might be somebody else different the next day. For example, this little thing with Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum, it presents a pretty big dilemma the longer this thing drags out, because of Romney's reputation as a fiscal conservative and Santorum's reputation as a social conservative. Were this thing to drag out, Santorum get the nomination in a very disputed nomination. Don't get me wrong, very disputed nomination at the convention. Let's say it goes to the convention. They decide there, not before. If Santorum wins, what's he going to have to do? What's he going to have to do to court the fiscal conservatives? He's going to have to adopt policies that he attacked Mitt Romney on, which he's probably guilty of.